Hope you're having an amazing one, Wrestlezona family, whenever you happen to be tuning in. My name is Lance Reese, your definitive host for the show. I've been a fan of professional wrestling since I was about 6 years old, begging my parents to buy me action figures ever since I saw videos of Jeff Hardy swanton bombing on YouTube. We got a packed episode for you here today at Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse. We'll go into depth about what's happening in the world of WWE, All Elite Wrestling, and even some wrestling here local in the Valley. We also have some exciting segments coming up this hour, such as our 10-bell history, and we have a special interview coming up with Phoenix Championship Wrestling promoter Dom Vitalli. So I just want to start by saying I caved in and I got a Peacock subscription. Their WWE vault is spectacular from everything I've seen so far. I mean, I think my favorite subcategory would have to be the Superstars category, where they just have their whole roster and legends and people they could still associate themselves with, and they have like 100 clips for each superstar. They got everyone from like Stone Cold Steve Austin to Logan Paul to LA Knight. It's great. I just love it. Another cool thing on the Peacock subscription is, of course, they have the main brands like SmackDown, Raw, but they also have the older extensions like WCW, ECW. And something I found really interesting, the territories section. They have a whole subcategory dedicated to the territories that Vince McMahon bought. The territories is interesting, to say the least. I was watching a bit of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I think the thing I found the most interesting about watching Smoky Mountain Wrestling was paying attention to the crowd. I mean, the action itself wasn't the most amazing product. I mean, it's older wrestling, which can be good. I'm not saying older wrestling is bad, but it's that southern 90s wrestling happening in a Tennessee high school gym style of wrestling being recorded and now archived on the Peacock network. I was also watching the 2007 Royal Rumble. That was the year I was born, and I'm pretty sure it happened before, considering the Royal Rumble happens January, usually. It was definitely an interesting experience visiting these old Rumbles. Actually, part of my inspiration to get back into wrestling was watching Royal Rumble matches on YouTube that WWE would upload in full, and now probably the next WWE event I'll be watching for the first time in full is going to be the 2025 Royal Rumble, which there is a lot that could happen in that main Royal Rumble match. The main question is John Cena really going to win that Royal Rumble? I mean, maybe too far-fetched to say, but we know his retirement is coming up in 2025. To send him off with a match at WrestleMania could be the move, but will people like that idea? I mean, we've seen main event John for the longest time, and we've seen him in the top spots of the company, and he does deserve a good send-off. He was one of the best performers of that company and carried a big part of it on his back, but is it right to make him the winner? Is it right to make John Cena the 2025 Royal Rumble winner? I think no. I think they should give it to a different star. And that star in particular is, I think, Randy Orton. I think they should make Randy Orton a 3-time Royal Rumble winner and give him a chance against Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. That is what I think. But other predictions for the Rumble would be for the entries. I think on the men's side, I don't just think, I believe. And I believe Joe Hendry will be in the men's Royal Rumble this year, or this upcoming year. I also think Caitlyn and Jordynne Grace will be in the women's Rumble. We saw Jordynne Grace in the Rumble before, and that was wild. She had the Knockouts Championship with her. But meanwhile, the move from Raw to Netflix is happening soon. January 6th, 2025, at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California, with special guest Travis Scott. Yes, Travis Scott will be the special guest for this new era of Raw. I actually found out about this date and all the info because I was emailed by WWE, got the email for that. It claims for a new era of Raw So I'm looking forward to that, seeing what the deal is. Speaking of the aforementioned Randy Orton, though, he may be facing legitimate neck injuries as he was written off with a pile driver from Kevin Owens. So another question could be, is Kevin Owens the rightful winner of the Royal Rumble? Is it John Cena? Is it Randy Orton? Is it Joe Hendry? Should we make Joe Hendry the Royal Rumble winner? That's a little far-fetched, but there's 3 premium live events to close out the 2024 WWE schedule, as Survivor Series War Games takes place later this month on the 30th, NXT Deadline on December 7th, and Saturday night's main event the following week on December 14th. Those both take place in December, right before the new year. Now, at Saturday night's main event, we have Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens, and then we also have Gunther versus Damian Priest. I'm looking forward to the Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens match. Those two can put on a good match. Kenny Omega, not likely to return to AEW, opting to rather wrestle for New Japan Pro Wrestling, as he has stated that All Elite doesn't need him right now. Could this be a return to the top spot for Omega? Now, my better question is, I'm a wrestling guy who likes music a lot, so I need to know, are they going to bring back the Devil's Sky theme song for Omega? That would be great. That would be fantastic. That is all my little wrestling heart could ever desire. Speaking of music, QT Marshall brings the boom against Big Boom AJ and Big Justice in new diss track ahead of their scheduled match at AEW's Full Gear 0 Hour. Little personal tidbit. My dad hates the Costco guys. He keeps asking me whenever he sees them, like, why they're popular, or, you know, when does it become too much? Like, how did these guys go from rapping about chicken bakes and walking around Costco to walking around an AEW ring and fighting QT Marshall? You know, it's like, and it's on a pay-per-view, which I think is crazy. This isn't just one TV tape-in or anything or dark match. No, it might be on the pre-card, but I still think that's insane, and I'm kind of looking forward to the match. I'm curious to see how it pans out. The AEW pay-per-view schedule for 2024 coming to an end after Full Gear in December's World's End. They pick up right where they leave off with Grand Slam Australia at Suncorp Stadium in the Land Down Under in Brisbane. Good move for AEW going more global. AEW winner is coming as announced for December 11th at the T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Just kind of reflecting on the local scene, which I've been trying to get back involved in for the past 2 or 3 months. I recently went to the IZW Licks That Kill event with Nick Nemeth on the main card. That fatal 4-way match between main event Daniels, the champion, and eventual winner, Thugnificent, Bryce Saturn, and Nick, was just absolutely fantastic. The anticipation felt real building up to that match, and it just paid off in every aspect. I mean, main event is a great heel. That oh man, Nick Nemeth, that upside down super kick spot against Thugnificent gave me shades of Brooklyn 4 NXT TakeOver with Adam Cole kicking Ricochet. Another match was for the Arizona State Heavyweight Champion, as the former champ Ray Rosas took on eventual winner EJ Sparks, who I've seen before at Monster and other wrestling events pre-COVID. That was a great match. EJ Sparks is a great face for the company. If you want to see a photo of me with EJ Sparks, it is up on the Wrestlezona Instagram. That is at Wrestlezona on Instagram. Women's match coming up for the vacant Women's Championship match. It was Morgan versus the winner Alice Blair. And speaking of Blair, there were some kids behind me, and they were blaring out obscenities towards both of the wrestlers. It was terrible. Terrible. I had no idea where the parents were. They were just cursing, and I can't even repeat back some of the things they were saying. I can't even repeat back 95% of the things they were saying, but it was bad. I mean, it was interesting. There were just these kids screaming, and I had no idea where the parents were. It was bad. There was then another vacant match for the 3D Sports Fighting Championship, as Damien Desire took on Parada the Pirate, the eventual winner of that match. It ended abruptly in countout, but went on by word of IZW officials and ended with a pin. Big news again, as the Navajo Warrior retirement tour is announced. First saw and met the man at IZW Monster 2020 right before the pandemic. I think that was like a month. Little under a month before the pandemic. I saw him alongside Dan Severn and some other stars at an IZW show. It was fantastic. And the man is still doing what he does best. You know, the unfortunate thing about that show is I went with my friend, and we get back to his car after the show, and it was just completely ransacked. Someone had gone through and stolen pretty much everything they can except the car. Good thing he took his keys. You know, he doesn't usually do that, but man, do I still feel for my friend. And if you're listening, man, I'm sorry that happened that night. That's very unfortunate. Wrapping up my overview of the wrestling world, stay tuned to Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse, as we have an interview coming right up with Phoenix Championship Wrestling owner Dom Vitalli. But first, we have our 10-bell history. 10-bell history. 1. Former WWE star Curtis Axel, son of WWE Hall of Famer Mr. Perfect, was performing for WWE developmental scene when he had 3 chances to win the Florida Heavyweight Championship from a young Sheamus. Yet 2 of those matches ended in disqualification, and the third ended with Eric Perez winning the title from the Irishman. 2. The first WWE Hall of Fame inductee was Andre the Giant in 1993. 3. Before DDT star Kudo got his start in pro wrestling, he started in Shudo. Kudos to Kudo and Shudo. 4. Coming in at around 110 pounds, El Torito is the lightest wrestler to have ever competed in the WWE. 5. Gail Kim was the first Asian woman to win the Women's Championship in WWE, losing it after 28 days, never getting another push to the title in the company again. 6. Shad Gaspard of WWE's tag team Crime Time with JTG was digitally scanned to be the character Kratos in the God of War franchise. Rest in peace. 7. Jushin Thunder Liger was a familiar face of WCW programming, even during the Monday Night Wars, due to their connections with New Japan Pro Wrestling. 8. Speaking of, Jushin Thunder Liger has had 1 match in WWE. This was an appearance on NXT against Tyler Breeze at the very first TakeOver Brooklyn. This appearance, plus all his work in and out of the business, got him inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in the year 2020. 9. Despite his popularity, the Hall of Famer, Jake the Snake Roberts, never won a championship throughout his entire illustrious WWE career. 10. The WrestleMania 19 main event match is the only one to feature both wrestlers using their real names, that being Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle. As our 10-bell history wraps up, make sure to stay tuned to Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse, as we have an interview with Arizona-based wrestler and promoter Dom Vitalli, happening right now. All right, how does this sound? Sounds good?
Sounds good on my end.
All right, and we are in. So, tell me, Dom. Who is Dom Vitalli?
There's a lot to tell you. That was a loaded question. So myself, I guess the most encompassing answer I can give you is I'm all things wrestling, apparently. Long-time pro wrestler. Started my wrestling career back in 2001, and I've been doing it ever since, and kind of slowing down these days, you know. And kind of transitioning out of in-ring stuff. And now more so my focus is training the future generation, promoting Phoenix Championship Wrestling, and doing some outside coaching as well.
Yeah, and outside coaching, I love that you mentioned that. I was doing research and training AZ. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center is something that has kind of grown into something much larger than I thought it was going to be. So for the longest time out here in Arizona, there was no real reputable wrestling training facility, and there was a need for it at the time. And the last thing I wanted to do was train anybody or be involved in wrestling training as far as it being my primary responsibility. There were places to train out here and things like that, but there was no curriculum. There was no structure. And I would try to help out as much as I could possibly. I'd pop in here and there. And it took a lot of convincing from my business partner, John Wolfgang, to open the school alongside him. And we've been open, now this March, I think will be about 6 years or so. And we've turned into one of the biggest pro wrestling training centers, not only on this side of the country, but in the entire United States, and churning out some really, really high caliber talent and getting the eyes and attention of a lot of important people in wrestling.
Oh, that's all incredible. So you were talking about being in the business for a while, since 2001, you said?
Yeah, I started, my first match was in 2001. I started training in December of 2000.
Wow. Yeah. 2 decades.
Pretty old.
So, where does the passion for wrestling come from? Were you a fan beforehand? Were you just interested in the thematics of it?
For me, I've always been a wrestling fan since I was a little kid. When my dad and my uncle introduced me to the WWF, and I was a Hulkamaniac from day one, and I still am to this day, to be quite honest with you. And it's just something that as you go through your childhood, as a wrestling fan, you have those friends of yours that kind of dabble every now and then, especially during the Attitude Era. That's when the Attitude Era hit. That's kind of when I was in high school. And all of my friends decided to like wrestling all of a sudden. And I was like, I've been telling you guys, this is like the coolest thing ever for forever. Now you guys want to come?
It's just trendy now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they all grew out of it eventually. And you could put grow out of it in quotation marks, but I never did. I just loved it from day one. And I think it was like during the height of my ECW fandom, because being from the Northeast originally, it was a huge part of my fandom. I don't know, for some reason I had that Shane Douglas really just kind of lured me in, and I was like, that guy's the coolest guy in the world, and I want to be exactly like him. And that's when that thought process of maybe I want to be a wrestler someday kind of came to fruition. And then I started to do the research and kind of what it takes to become one, where to go. Is there how do you just sign up? Is there like a training? Is there a school? None of that stuff I knew until I started to actually do the research. And this is, in my high school years, which is, I graduated in 2000. So this is like before the internet for the most part, where you're trying to do as much research as you can without the internet, which was a lot tougher back then. But when you really want something, you find a way to figure out how to do it. And I think more importantly, how to do it the right way. And that's kind of how I got into this and found a training facility that was close to where I lived and was reputable and made the right connections with the right people. And then we were kind of off to the races.
Wow. Yeah. Professional wrestling is definitely an art, huh?
I would say so. I think that term, the art of wrestling, kind of gets thrown around haphazardly. I think there are limits to what wrestling as an art actually is. For me, like if it's not done in a wrestling ring, it's not art. Like I've seen wrestling events be held in like bars and stuff like that without a wrestling ring. That's not wrestling. It's wrestling inspired, but it's not wrestling to me. The art of wrestling for me is the ability to convince the general public that what we do is 100% legitimate. That's the hardest part of our job. Because everyone always throws the F word out to us, right? And they go, oh, it's predetermined, it's fake, it's all this and that. When you're really good at this and you're an artist in wrestling, you can make those people second guess those statements. And that's what I set out to do my entire career, and that's what I set my wrestling students to do as well. We don't want to embarrass wrestling. We get enough grief as it is, as wrestlers, as wrestling fans. No one gets it but us,
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to do is give anyone any more ammunition. So if we can make them say, wait a minute, I thought I had this all figured out, but this, I don't know about this. This looks like it's legit. Then we've done our job. Then we're the real artists.
Yeah. It's also definitely a gift, I'd say.
It's a privilege, and we're privileged to be able to do this as wrestlers. And we're privileged to have wrestling as a a medium of entertainment, I think, as well, even as like fans. Like none of us are owed anything in wrestling. We hear that all the time, especially when you start to wrestle and you're in there for a few years. You always hear this phrase, wrestling owes you nothing. And it really doesn't. And that's why for me right now, it's like, I got to give back. I got to give back to this thing that's given me so much. It's taken a lot, believe me. It's taken a lot from my life, but it's also given me a lot of great things. And it's my job to leave it better than I found it. And that's kind of my role now as, coach, promoter, all kinds of things. Just like, hey, when it's all said and done and I'm too old to even try to get in a ring, or I say, you know what, wrestling, it's been real, but I got to go altogether. Like I want it in better shape than it was when I started.
Yeah. That's a wise way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
It's would you say the past 2 decades of your career has been momentous, like building up upon itself, or have there been those roadblocks that come along?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's always peaks and valleys, it's never smooth. I've been saying, I would say for the past 15 years, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. this is my last year doing it. And here I am in year, 24 now, 23. And we're going strong in some regard. I'm slowed down in the ring. I'm not doing as many matches anymore. And I don't have that desire, but I still have the desire to be involved in wrestling to some capacity. Again, whether it's promoting, coaching, whatever the case may be. But it's been hard. Wrestling, I don't think a lot of people really understand what goes into doing this at a high level. And I've always wanted to do this at a high level. I want my students to do this at a high level. I don't believe in doing this as a hobby because it takes so much from you. And I don't think a hobby should potentially destroy your life. I think if it's something that you want to commit your time and your efforts to, you should want to do it to the best that you possibly can and be the best at it that you possibly can be. So over the years, I've lost, personal relationships. I've had family members angry at me. I missed important events. I've suffered injuries, you name it. But on the flip side of that, like I've accomplished things that I never thought I would be able to do. I've wrestled alongside people I looked up to. I've had guys that I grew up as that were my heroes saying, "Hey man, you're really good at this and you know what you're doing. You're a great wrestler. You're a great coach." Like that, that's like saying if you're a huge basketball fan and you get a chance to play alongside Michael Jordan or LeBron James, like that would be the pinnacle, know? And for me, that's part of it. And, I met my wife through wrestling and now, we have a young son and, all that wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for this art or this sport of pro wrestling. I owe it a lot.
So it's like this vicious but necessary cycle of life in wrestling.
Yeah, and I try to prepare my wrestling students for that. I think it's when you're not involved and you're trying to get involved, you see the glamorous side of it. I think that's got the most screen time, if you will. I think everybody sees how cool it is and how awesome it looks. And these wrestlers now kind of come off as like celebrities or pseudo celebrities, and when you're trying to figure out who you are and what you want, like that's enticing. But I try to be very realistic with all my students and I lay it out very plain as day before they even enroll. I say it's not as glamorous as it looks. Yeah, it's cool sometimes for sure, but the dark side of it, and I don't mean that in like the dark side of the ring side of it, but the dark side of it far outweighs the great. You have a lot more losses than you have wins in wrestling, and not just in ring. It takes a special person to be able to do this. You have to be mentally strong and you have to be physically strong to do this, especially again at the highest level. That's whenever I speak about wrestling, I always speak at doing it at the highest level, not just as a hobby or locally or just things like that. If you want to do this, if you want to reach the pinnacle, which to me is WWE, that's the top of the food chain in what we do. If you want to be there, you have to be willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. And some of those things aren't necessarily the things that we want to do, but that's part of being successful in wrestling.
Is it very much like how artists will say, if you want to get the most out of the audience, you have to make them some level of uncomfortable?
Yeah, I would say so. You don't want to let the audience know what's coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of wrestling too. It's like when they think you're going left, you go right. Because in wrestling, everyone thinks they got it figured out. And the best thing we could possibly do is kind of, I don't want to say fool them in a like nefarious type of way, but wrestlers have to remember that they're the puppet masters and the fans are the puppets. We're in control. A good wrestler is in control. A good wrestler can manipulate your emotions. They can make you angry if they want to make you angry. They can make you happy, or if you want to make you happy, they can make you want to cheer them if they want to. They can take you on this roller coaster ride. And that's it's another piece of the artistic part of wrestling. It's being able to feed off your audience and kind of react to them and give them what is needed in that moment. I don't believe in I'm going to do A, B, C, and D in my wrestling match, and I'm going to go out there and do it. Well, if you go out there and do A and B and the crowd absolutely hates A and B, why are you going to go do C and D? The art of wrestling is being able to listen and read and feed off the crowd and then go from there.
I definitely feel it in the shows you put on. Like that 6-year anniversary show at Skyline, that was I didn't know it was going to happen with every minute. It was just moment after moment. It kept rolling. That's
the pinnacle for us for me as far as a promoter goes. That's the biggest show I've ever promoted, and it's taken 6 years to get to that point. I think we'd be foolish to think that we were going to do that on day one. And I think we were foolish to think that, because we did. We honestly thought that's what it was going to look like for us in our first event 6 years ago. And you were at this most recent event, and we had about 1,500 people, 1,600 people packed into that gym. And we thought that was going to be on day one. And our first show, I think we had about maybe 100 people in the building. And we had Jacob Fatu was on that show, and a bunch of other people, just Jungle Boy, I think, was on that show. Like a bunch of different, maybe not so widely known 6 years ago, but definitely widely known now. And we thought, let's just get all these big wrestling names, bring them in and mix them in with some of the local guys, and everyone's going to show up. And that is not how promoting works. I mean, you can have, John Cena on your show, but if no one knows about your show, no one's going to go see it, And it's been a learning process over the past six years, I think, all for the better. And we developed some great infrastructure and a great talent pool of all local wrestlers. We're not bringing in, crazy, big names or anything like that for the most part. Every now and then we will, to thank our fans. But that anniversary show was our biggest crowd yet, and it was all homegrown
local talent,
all local. Yeah, aside from, I think we had 2 folks from out of town, but they're not huge names or anything like that. They're up and comers, and it's a testament to the hard work of everybody that's involved, from in ring to behind the scenes. Our production crew doesn't get their flowers often enough. I think they are a huge part of what makes our events that big and that special. And I want to make sure that gets said out loud, because sometimes, behind the scenes, you don't always get that recognition you deserve.
I just say, for me personally, shout out your poster guy. They kill it every time. Like every time I see a Phoenix Championship Wrestling poster, I just know it's going to be something good.
Yeah, he's the best. And he was one of my wrestling students. He's an older gentleman, and he took it upon himself. Originally, we had a really good graphic designer that we were outsourcing to. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I think I can do better. And I said, show me you can do better, and I'll hire you instead of him.
And he did better.
And he took it as a personal challenge, and he knocked it out of the park the first time. I said, all right, you're hired. Now you have a standard that's set. Everyone better be better than the next. And he's knocked it out of the park ever since. And he's amazing at what he does, and he takes pride in what he does. So, and I think that's most important.
I feel like the more and more we say it, the more the term loses its meaning. We just keep saying wrestling this, wrestling that. So I read in an article that you and John Wolfgang did for Croc Night News, that you guys often tell your students that it's bigger than wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. And we said, if we're going to do this, it has to be about more than just creating great wrestlers. Yeah, that's the be all end all at the end of the day, but it's got to be something more than that. And we came up with, it wasn't even like a tagline, it was an accident. It's like, it's got to be more than wrestling. And that's kind of what we've done. We're producing killer athletes, in both men and women, but we wanted to do more for our community, more to help our wrestling students excel in life. And that's a lot of the skills that they learn with us in training. Yeah, you're going to learn the ins and outs of the wrestling business for sure. Yeah, and how to have a match in ring, and how to do a promo, and have character and all that kind of stuff. Yes, of course. But I'm going to teach you skills during all of that you can utilize in your everyday life as a mother, father, husband, son, daughter, whatever, to make you a better human being. That's the biggest goal for me, for my students, make them better human beings overall. Because, like we kind of joked about it a little bit ago, the dark side of the ring, right? We all know that throughout wrestling history, there's been some really garbage people involved, and I want to change that. I don't want this sport that I love to have this black eye on it. And whenever anybody thinks about it, they think, oh, they're drug addicts, or, oh, they're just like the dregs of society. Like, no, I want them to think of guys like John Wolfgang, who is a hero to like hundreds of kids that come to our events every single month, and they look up to him, and he's a genuinely good man. And I want to create those type of athletes so they can be, put on that pedestal for not just kids, but for adults as well, that to look up to them and say, wow, like that is a good person. And wrestling it can be full of the right people. And that's what we're building. We're just building better people as much as we possibly can. And the great wrestling part is just kind of like the sprinkles on the cake.
Jeez, I'm just thinking, like, you guys have a show going on tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, so tomorrow is our next Live on Broadway event. The main event is a steel cage match. So it's a rematch of the main event from the last show, where John Wolfgang is now the new Phoenix Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. And it's been a long journey for him. He's been chasing that title for I think almost like 2 years now. And Class has kind of always been the thorn in the side. Yeah. Class was the former champion, and say what you will about him and his personality. He's he's a very smart guy. Don't get me wrong. Maybe not the best role model, so to speak, but you can't take away from his physical attributes and how he held that title. He held that title for over a year straight, undefeated, a phenomenal wrestler. And he was fending off Wolfgang for quite some time. And he got too big for his britches, and John finally got the big one from him. And now he wants to crack back at it, and if anyone deserves that rematch, it's him. It really is, because he held that title and gave it the prestige that it has. But things kind of got a little bit personal between the last event and tomorrow night, where there was a physical altercation outside of our training center where John got pretty badly banged up at the hands of Class, and law enforcement got involved and some other folks as well. So the meat in the middle was, all right, John, to avoid litigation, what do you want? Like, let's try to not tarnish anyone's future career plans or anything like that. And John's like, just give him to me in the cage. Give me a cage and just let me settle this thing once and for all with him. Like, I'm done with him, and I want to be done with him. So we gave John, his wish, and tomorrow's going to be another killer event. We're just about sold out for this one as well. This one, our regular monthly shows, we average about 600 people per show because our building's a little bit smaller. And I think we're a couple dozen away from a sellout of that show. And we're just building up to the next big one that we're going to have, where we're going to cram another 1,500 into another building, and 2,000, and so on and so forth. But we got another stacked card tomorrow with a lot of the local Phoenix Championship Wrestling stars like Zamaya and Grizz Brody and Devin Reno and Kike Calderon, a wide variety of folks that are going to be on this event, and I'm really looking forward to it. This is the kickoff for the next year, because our anniversary show is our big one. That's our quote unquote WrestleMania, and now this is the first one after. And like I always say, you're only as good as the last event that you did. So, our philosophy with us is, okay, whenever we have a successful show, which all of our shows are successful, thank God, I say enjoy it for the 24 hours, because after 24 hours is over, it's on to the next one. And, we don't want to go down. We want to go nothing but up. So, and I got nothing but faith that this event tomorrow night is going to be just as good as any of the others that we've held.
Sounds great. What's the, now that you're here and you're preparing yourself for that show tomorrow, what is the mentality like the day before a show compared to, let's say, like when it's being conceptualized?
Well, I think there's a lot of different perspectives for that. As a promoter, you have, like, I think we were kind of talking about it a little bit before we started recording today. You have as much planning as you possibly can. And it's a big, giant ball of stress all the time, because things are always changing, and you can plan as much as you possibly want. But with an event, especially with the size of ours, there are so many moving pieces. Something's bound to get screwed up at some point, whether it's before, during, or after the show. And you have to be willing and able to pivot on a moment's notice. So from a promoter's perspective, it's always high. I'm always on high alert from even not from conception. Conception, yeah, I have these ideas. Let's go ahead and roll with it this way. And as they come to life, the stress kind of increases for sure up until that show is over and done with, and you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief. As a wrestler, it's different. When you're going into an event and you know who you're going to be wrestling, there is a certain level of preparation that goes into that, because you want to be able to compete with that person and know what's coming and know what they can do and how you can compete alongside them. So you kind of just get more tunnel vision that way, and you're focused on, okay, how do I get through this match the best way possible? And then, game time, everyone, it's just like if you watch athletes before they go out for sporting events, some of the athletes, wrestlers included, they'll have their headphones on in the locker room trying to pump themselves up. I was never that guy. To this day, like me, after a while, you kind of just get like, all right, cool, man. I got it figured out. You gain a level of confidence. I do 10 push-ups and I'm good to go. That's all I need to go out there.
That's your moment of clarity.
That's it, man. That is literally all I need. Where other guys and girls need more, and everyone's unique in that regard. I think everyone has their level of preparation, whether it's on a promoting side, whether it's, in-ring side, or even the guy that makes the posters. I think it's the beauty of what we do. We hit so many different areas that a lot of people just don't even consider.
As we close out our episode with Don Vitalli on Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse, where or what's next for Phoenix Championship Wrestling as you guys head into the next year?
Growth. That's the biggest thing for me. I always want more. I always want to be the best at whatever it is that I do. I don't believe in being second best. I don't believe in putting half an effort in. So, the pinnacle of our success thus far was that anniversary show. Cool. It's over now. Now the next one, I want more. I want that crowd to be bigger. I want to, if we can get a bigger venue, as long as we can put the people in it. There's nothing worse than having a huge building and not enough people to fill it up. So I don't want to do that. But growth all around, growth in the size of our promotion, growth for our wrestling students at the training center. I want my wrestling students to make things difficult for me as a coach and a promoter. And what I mean by that is I want a crop of 60 killer wrestlers that I have to choose from and say, hey, I only got spots for about 20 of you on the next event. Show me how bad you want it. And I think that's the best problem to have. If I can have 60 killers on my roster, that means I'm doing a really good job. And that means they're going to get work, whether it's here, elsewhere, and it's going to make them better because they're striving for that spot. So growth as far as the promotion goes, growth as far as the training center goes. We really want to streamline and kind of get more of the right people involved in our organization, both in ring and outside the ring. And there's processes in place right now to do that, and I'm a big proponent as well as of not rushing things. I don't believe in growing too fast or rushing into growth, because I've seen that happen in a variety of different businesses, even outside of wrestling over my lifetime, and it's been nothing but make those businesses crumble because they thought they were bigger than they actually were, and they made a lot of poor choices. So I don't want to fall down that rabbit hole. So John and I, again, very similar mindsets, and we're very strategic about what we do and where we're going. We have the vision for the training center and Phoenix Championship Wrestling mapped out for the next 3 to 4 years already. And we've done it like that in the past too. And we've followed our plan, and our plan has worked up until this point. And I have no doubt that it's going to work that way, into the future as well. And again, I think one of the other main goals for us, it's a one-stop shop for pro wrestling in Arizona, and it's Phoenix Championship Wrestling and the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center. We do it better than anybody else. Hands down, plain and simple. And if you think I'm, full of it, my thing is numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie, right? Yeah. Our shows are always packed, always full of people, the highest attended in this state by far. No one else touches that because we do things the right way. And I just want people to think Arizona, when they think Arizona wrestling, and right now it's a pretty much the case. They think us first, but I want us to be the deal. And a worldwide destination, not just a statewide destination.
Well, Dom, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
It's been wonderful speaking with you. Very insightful. Mm-hmm. You're a very wise man with a lot to say.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much.
Well, that wraps up episode 1 of Wrestlezona. Thank you to those who stuck around to the end or even decided to tune in for a bit. Till the next time, this is Lance Reese from Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse, signing out.